Hi, my dear students. Today we shall be dealing with the portion of pollution ecology. And in the pollution ecology, the portion of greenhouse gases, the building of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, leading to the raising in the temperature of the earth, and the process of global warming and the climate change. Before dealing with the climate change, we shall deal with how the atmosphere is providing soothing temperature to the earth, how buildup of the greenhouse gases into the atmosphere is leading to the increment in the temperature, leading to the global warming, and how this global warming is affecting our climate. Let's see how the atmosphere works, how the atmosphere provides warmth to our planet Earth, and how accumulation of more and more greenhouse gases in the atmosphere leads to the change in this role, and it leads to the overheating of the planet Earth. So let us share the information. Atmosphere is soothing blanket. When you are feeling too cold, if somebody wraps a blanket around your body, you feel the pleasure and the warmth. And similarly, our Mother Earth is wrapped around the warm blanket of atmosphere. Atmosphere is a blanket, is a cloak around the earth, and when the solar radiation impinges upon the earth, about 30% of it is radiated back into the space by the atmosphere, and 70% which enters the earth's interior, it provides warmth to the ocean and the earth. But this 70% is not retained by the earth. Rather, when the warming occurs, the solar radiation is transformed into longer wavelength infrared thermal radiation. And this thermal radiation is again radiated back towards the outer atmosphere and the space. But the blanket of atmospheres and the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere traps those infrared thermal waves and re-radiate them back to the earth, and this re-radiation of the thermal radiation keeps the earth warm enough to sustain life. Had atmosphere been not there, we would have been like the moon, where the darker side of the moon has temperature hundreds of degrees below the zero, and the sustenance of life is nearly impossible. Similarly, the atmosphere is not only there, but it is having the right mix of gases, so that it is trapping only that amount of it which is necessary for the sustenance of our life. Take the example of Venus. In the Venus, the atmosphere is many more times denser than our atmosphere, and the trap heat many more times than our atmosphere does, leading to the excessive heating of the planet, and there also life is not possible. So life on the earth is possible. In addition to the many other factors, it is also possible due to the atmosphere, because atmosphere is playing a role of a blanket, and that blanket is keeping the planet Earth soothingly warm. The warmness is only to the extent it is required. It is now neither less than the required extent, and it is neither more than the required extent. So let us see through this schematic representation. Here you have got the sun, and from the sun, solar radiation is impinging upon the earth. The atmosphere has begun from this level. So as soon as the solar radiation is entering the atmosphere, a major chunk is being reflected back. Here, the first process I have given numerals. So the number one, what happens that as the solar radiation enters the Earth's atmosphere, a major chunk of it is reflected back. So here I have written part of the solar radiation being reflected back after reaching the Earth's atmosphere. And part of that, I have talked about this near about 30%, and part of that, that is 70%, has given warmth to the ocean and here the earth, surface of the earth. And so rest of the energy absorbed by the land and the ocean hit the earth. So it causes heating of the earth. So all the heat that has been generated is not trapped. Rather, solar radiation is transformed into the longer wavelength infrared heat radiation, and that radiation is reflected back again towards the atmosphere. You see this thick arrow. This is taking back the the thermal radiation back towards the space. Now, here comes the atmosphere, and you see here that a part of 0.38 heat radiated from the Earth's surface re-radiated back to the space. So heat here 70% is being absorbed, and out of this 70%, a major chunk had been transformed into the thermal radiation. This thermal radiation is again escaping Earth, but this atmosphere has re-radiated a major part of this thermal radiation back to the Earth. So some of the heat which was radiated back by the Earth is trapped by the greenhouse gases and re-radiated back to the Earth, keeping Earth warm enough to sustain the life. So had atmosphere been not there, the entire amount of the thermal radiation which was radiated back by the Earth would have escaped into the outer space, throwing the Earth into shivering cold, into perpetual cold, and life would not have evolved. So here, this atmosphere is playing the role of a soothing blanket because it is re-radiating a major chunk of thermal radiation which was radiated back by the Earth. It is re-radiating it back to the Earth, and so this re-radiation traps the heat enough to keep the warmth of the Earth to sustain the life on the Earth. Now, how this re-radiation is possible? So, the atmosphere has a layer of greenhouse gases. Why green? Why greenhouse? Why those gases are called greenhouse gases? In fact, you must have seen the greenhouses, the houses of glass pans built for the growing plants in the cold conditions. So these glass houses, since they sustain greeneries, they are called greenhouses, and these greenhouses trap the heat much in the same way as the atmosphere trap the heat. But it is analogous. It is analogous to the atmosphere trapping the heat because the principles are similar but not identical. So as heat is trapped inside a glass house built up for rearing plants in colder places called greenhouse, similarly the atmosphere traps the thermal radiation which was radiated back by the Earth towards the outer space. It not only traps the thermal radiation but re-radiates it back towards the Earth, and that's why such effect is called the greenhouse effect, because it is analogous to the principles on which the greenhouses, that is houses made of glasses for the greenery, function. So Thermal infrared radiations are absorbed by the gas molecules, and it is similar, it is analogous to the heat trapping by the glass house effect. So this is called greenhouse effect, and the gases which trap the the thermal radiation are called greenhouse gases. There are many greenhouse gases, of which water vapor, carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, ozone, and some chlorofluorocarbons are important. They contribute to the warming of the earth because they play a main role in reflecting back the thermal radiation towards the earth, and thereby they act as a blanket of warmness over the earth. But these greenhouse gases are very sensible. Their concentration is very sensible. If their concentration in the atmosphere goes down, as I have given the example of moon where the atmosphere is not there, so it leads to the escape of the heat. And as I have mentioned, the Venus where there is a very dense atmosphere, and so it leads to the over trapping of the heat. Both the conditions are dangerous. There should be optimal trapping of the heat. The temperature should be within the range in which the organisms can survive, can carry out their physiological activities. That's why any alteration in the concentration of these greenhouse gases will lead to the alteration in the thermal budget of the planet, and if the greenhouse's concentration decrease in the atmosphere, it will lead to lower temperature, whereas its increase in the atmosphere, it will lead to higher temperature, more trapping of it. So the greenhouse effect or the process of greenhouse is a natural process. Greenhouse gases are very much there and they are carrying out the function. And that function is necessary for the survival of the organism on the earth. But when the concentration of these greenhouse gases are going up due mainly to the anthropogenic activities, the activities of man is leading to the addition of more and more greenhouse gases into the atmosphere and thereby thickening the blanket around the earth and raising the temperature on the earth. So, how these molecules trap the heat? They are 3 or more atoms, and these atoms are held together loosely. So when heat reaches there, the thermal radiation reaches there, they vibrate and conserve or trap that thermal radiation, absorb that thermal radiation, and in course transfers that thermal radiation. So they act as heat trap as well as heat reflector. Now we see I have broached the topic of anthropogenic activities, the activities of human beings leading to accumulation of more and more greenhouse gases in the atmospheric surroundings. So let us see that which sector is contributing how much of the greenhouse gas into the atmosphere. So sources of greenhouse gas emission. You see here that the major contribution, rather the largest contribution of 28% is of transport sector. Transport sector is the biggest culprit, you can say, and the seizure of the transport sector in these hard times during the lockdowns. You have seen, you might have noticed the newspapers that the air quality index has gone for the betterment. The water pollution has gone down. So this transportation sector is a big culprit. It is contributing about 28% of the share of the greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. Then electricity generation through coal-based plants, through hydroelectric plants, through these plants contribute to the greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, and this 27% contribution. So next only to the transport sector by 1%. The electricity sector is contributing. Then industry, various types of industries, they are also pouring out their chimneys into the atmosphere and thereby contributing the greenhouse gases. Commercial and residential sector, we are upkeeping our residences with ultra modern gizmos, and they are consuming electricity, and they are also causing direct and indirect emission of the greenhouse gases, and that emission adds up to 12%, big chunk. 10% of the greenhouse gases also arise from our agriculture practices. We carry out agriculture practices in such a way that it emits methane and many types of fertilizers. Their bleaching leads to the addition of the carbon dioxide. So these greenhouse gases are also belching of methane by cattle heads. So these are also adding to the concentration of atmospheric greenhouse gases, and so the layer of atmospheric greenhouse gases is getting greater and greater concentrated, and this increase in concentration is leading to reflection of more and more thermal radiation towards the earth and causing the heating on the earth. So we have seen a few greenhouse gases, how the emission of different greenhouse gases by different sectors. So energy supply 25%, industry 19.4%, forestry 17%, agriculture 13.5%, transport and residential and commercial buildings 7.9%. So on the global level, how per sector emission is there, but this information is of 2018, and so it is the latest one. You can overlook this, but it has got many more subdivisions, so I have included it in our description. So when more and more greenhouse gases accumulate inside the atmosphere which was providing us a soothing warmth is now providing us a sweeting warmth. It has turned into a sweeting blanket. The global temperature is gradually going up, and the warmth is now causing disturbances, and we are getting sweated. We are wiping our sweats that how should we deal with these problems and how should we conserve our atmosphere so that we can maintain global temperature to the optimum level and avoid catastrophic consequences of climatic change. So increased amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere will intensify naturally occurring phenomenon. So I have dealt with this. Let us see that 30% amount of methane. What happens that in the post-industrial revolution, the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere has increased by roughly 30%, big increase. And the atmosphere has added almost double. The amount of methane has doubled in the atmosphere by the end of the 20th century, beginning from the industrial revolution. So this is a very anxious sign. It causes anxiety. It is a very sign of great concern that there has been a jump of 30% since the industrial revolution till the end of 20th century, and the amount of methane in the atmosphere has just doubled in the same period. So it is a cause of great concern. Let us see how this overheating or sweating is taking place. We have seen in the last schematic representation that the solar radiation is impinging upon Earth. A good part of it is reflected back. 70% which is absorbed is again re-radiated as thermal radiation, and this thermal radiation is going into the outer space. But this greenhouse gas layer in the atmosphere, it is re-radiating a good percentage of that reflected heat back into the atmosphere, and that's why the atmosphere has maintained its warmth. Now, where we are going wrong, you see here in the 6th point, here the habitation, and due to our anthropogenic activities, more and more greenhouse gases are being emitted, and these greenhouse gases are being added into the atmosphere. So you see here the greenhouse gas layer here is almost invisible, but it has much more thickened here. So the anthropogenic activities are leading to the emission of more and more greenhouse gases, and accumulation of those greenhouse gases into the atmosphere has thickened the layer of greenhouse gases. So the point 6 is enhanced levels of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. This is thickening. This has been indicated by the point number 6, which says that due to the anthropogenic activities, enhanced amount of greenhouse gases has accumulated into the atmosphere. Now, here there was normal condition. Normally, you see that the heat is lesser amount of it is radiated back. More amount of it has gone outside the atmosphere into the space. But in this picture, in this schematic representation, you see here that the heat was being re-reflected back as it had been there. So similarly, out of the 70% which was taken in by the earth and the ocean and converted into the infrared thermal radiation and again radiated back, this is radiation by the earth and ocean, and out of this radiation you see here a major chunk went out of the atmosphere into the outer space. But here, after the thickening of this greenhouse gas layer, you see here that a major chunk is being re-reflected back, and only a minor proportion, a minor proportion of the gases being reflected are going out. So you see here that due to the thickening of the greenhouse gases, more and more heat is being re-radiated back. These greenhouse gases are trapping heat and re-radiating back, and that is cause of the concern for we people, and it is leading to the warmness. It is leading to the rise, undue warmness, you can say, the rise in the temperature of the globe, which is being called global warming. So these two schematic representations show how greenhouse effect is keeping the warmth of the earth to the optimal level, and how excessive greenhouse gases in the environment, in the atmosphere, are turning back more heat. So that's how the temperature is maintained back the thermal radiation which was about to escape into the outer space. But addition of more and more greenhouse gases converts that soothing touch, that soothing warmth being provided by the atmosphere into the sweeping warmth, that is, the global temperature is rising due to the accumulation of more and more greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, trapping more and more heat and radiating that thermal radiation back to the earth. So this is the factor which is leading to the global warming. Now, having seen the mechanism, we shall deal with each of the greenhouse gases which are contributing to the global warming in the next class. Thank you. Thank you very much.